Wonderful. Well, I'm conscious that it is edging towards the end of the year, and you've all very generously set time aside for this conversation. And I think that reflects just how important and how interesting the topic is, and I'm sure how interesting the conversation will be. Welcome. My name is Lindsey Macdonald. I am Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees at DataKind UK. I'm also, in my, as it were, day job, the Chief Exec of Magic Breakfast, who is a charity that has benefited from the support of DataKind UK volunteers and support. So I love coming to these sessions because I remember and think about kind of the excitement and the learning and the aha moments and the hair pulling out moments in equal measure that data dives and work around data and systems really unlocks. Today's session is called How Do We Show That? And it's about measuring progress in the third sector. And this is such an important topic, not just because of the need for us, maybe from a fundraising perspective or demonstrating impact and performance to regulators or commissioners, and also to various stakeholders. Ultimately, charities in particular, we are here to make a difference, a meaningful difference to the beneficiaries, to the individuals, the communities, the spaces that we are set up to support. And it's really challenging, I think, sometimes for us not to get caught up in the emotion and the belief that we all hold in our particular interventions, our work, our support. And I think what data can really do is give us the reassurance that it's not just about hearts, it's also about heads, and we have that data and that demonstration of impact and the difference that we can make. If you have any access needs or need any support at all in the session, then please message Nicole, who is very kindly supporting us from the DataKind team, and she will help with our tech requirements as and when they arrive. And she's obviously very happy to do that confidentially and able to help. So please do reach out to her. If you can't find Nicole, then message me and I will try and seamlessly help that to happen as well. We will be recording the first 45 minutes of this session. So the discussion that the panel is going to provide will be kind of seen and heard for the webinar, but the Q&A session we won't be recording. So please feel free to ask maybe those thorny questions, those questions that you're really wrestling with within your organizations. I suspect lots of us have had to wrestle with them, are wrestling with them, or don't even realize yet that that's going to be an issue in the future. So the questions that really kind of you need to and want to ask, please do raise them here. For those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with DataKind UK, we are a charity with a vision of a strong and thriving third sector that embraces data to become more impactful. And as I touched on, I think that's something that's really important to all of us who work in the third sector as well. DataKind UK was founded in 2013 and have spent more than a decade helping charities, community interest groups, and others to explore their data in order to encourage innovation and enable improved decision-making, problem-solving, and enable best and good practice to be shared. I've already introduced myself, so we will now wonderfully be pleased by our amazing panel of representatives from the third sector who have recently worked with DataKind UK themselves. And what we hope we can do is inspire you and your organizations over lunch to hear the experiences of some citizens advice groups and Money A+E organizations who all tackle financial exclusion as a challenge, especially for minoritised groups. They are all at very different stages in their data journeys, and I think that's really valuable to all of us listening because there's always something that we can take from and learn from their experiences. And they are all thinking about how to track and understand the major challenges that they face in their service users' journey and progress. As we have such a panel, we're going to dive right in now. So please add your questions. These sessions, as I'm sure we're all very aware of, only become interesting if we've got good conversation and discussion from all of the attendees who I know come from a range of different organizations and perspectives and sectors. Please drop those into the chat. I will endeavor as best I possibly can to pick them up as we go. So we'll kick things off, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists to share with us a very short introduction to your organization. So who is your organization? And can you tell us about how your organization handles monitoring and evaluation, data collection, and the user journey assessment at the moment? So let's get a kind of starting point from each of you. And in no particular order, I'm going to pick on Holly in the first instance, if you don't mind kicking us off.
Absolutely not. Hello, everyone. My name's Holly Law. I am the Insights and Impact Manager at Citizens Advice North Somerset. So, just very briefly, for anyone that doesn't know, Citizens Advice, whilst it's a national charity, it's a network, and each local Citizens Advice is its own independent charity. So, briefly, we collect data through our case management system, Casebook. And it'd be wonderful to think that we have this sophisticated method where everything's collected there, and we can pull out everything that we want to, but that's not quite the reality. I know in our office, we've still got spreadsheets being used by individuals because they can't quite do what they want to. So the main sort of things that we record and report are things like the number of people that we help, the issues that they need our help with, and demographic information. But we also collect outcomes. So that will often be things like income maximization. So, as an example, benefit appeal may be one, and somebody will get back pay and also that ongoing benefit. So we would record that sort of outcome. Um, and we also concentrate on our client experience. So that is contacting clients after they've received our assistance to ask questions such as, have we helped you find a way forward? So we can measure over time how satisfied clients are. We can look at that and break it down by kind of different funders, different demographics, things like that, and see how well we're doing as a service.
Brilliant. Thank you, Holly. I'm going to go next to our wonderful double act, if I can describe you that way, Finn and Frederick from Money A&E.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Finn. I'm the co-creation officer at Money A&E for Money Advice and Education. And I've been in this role for a year and a half, and Fred has been with our organization a lot longer. And the A&E stands for Advice and Education. So we are a social enterprise based in East London, working with people all across London and sometimes outside to deliver money advice in the form of benefits and debt advice, but also focusing on education. So Fred delivers money workshops, which he will tell you about. And we are currently, this was the first big data evaluation that we have had done as a company. And so the way we collected data previously was team by team using different software as the organization has grown organically. And we haven't maximized our capacity. And so this with this capacity to measure. So with this project, we've really been able to dive into a comprehensive look at what we have done over the past 8 years in terms of the quantitative numbers. We work a lot with qualitative case studies. So this was a good opportunity to look at the quantitative side of things. And yeah, over to you, Fred.
Yeah, yeah. So you covered most of it. Yeah. So in terms of I'll just talk about education team. So we deliver to from age 11 upwards. So secondary school, colleges, university, and also communities. Um, and we do 1 day workshop. And there's also qualification workshop that we also deliver that which runs for 6 to 12 weeks. In terms of data collection on that, is a lot to do with the outcome. Kind of we want to see improvement, yeah, before and after, and also another aspect is that we also go back and also like 6 months um after the delivery, go back and ask if the things that we taught, if there's kind of people using it, there's a level of improvement on that. So yeah, so overall that's what in terms of short, that's where the education team picked that.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much. Michael, if you could give us an overview, please, of your work in Cambridge.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Lindsey. Yes, my name is Michael Mitchell. I'm a data analyst at Citizens Advice in Cambridge. I started out as a volunteer advisor about 6 years ago. I've had many roles since, but I've been a data analyst for about 2 years now. As Holly said, Citizens Advice has a national charity, like an umbrella charity, and then Stu and Holly and I are from the local offices. And there's about 250 of those local offices. And so while we're all very similar, we're all very different as well. So in Cambridge, as Holly said, in North Somerset, we provide advice and support to people on a range of different topics. Here in Cambridge, it's primarily funded for people living in Cambridge or South Cambridgeshire, and more recently, Cambridgeshire at large. I think Holly gave an excellent overview, so it's going to be difficult to add more to what Holly already said. It's a difficulty when there's more of you. So an excellent double act from Fred and Finn there as well. I'd say the thing to add to what Holly mentioned is that most of our kind of data storage, data engineering is all handled by the national charity, which is, in terms of data and data analytics, is our biggest blessing and our biggest curse, in that it allows the 250 organizations access to greater resources than perhaps a single charity or local office might have access to. And all credit to the National Citizens Advice Data Team. They've done an excellent job at meeting the needs of the majority of those 250 charities. And then when we worked with DataKind, it was to push the charities like Holly and Stu and myself, who are really trying to develop our data analytics capacity beyond what perhaps the average Citizens Advice office might want to have. So we're very grateful for DataKind and the support that they've given us to try and push the boundaries of what our data can tell us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. And I think it will be interesting to hear maybe in some of the Q&A when they come through your perspective, having been, I suppose, a frontline practitioner and then now moving into that kind of data and systems perspective. So really looking forward to that. Wonderful. And then last but by no means least, we have Stu Pearson from Citizens Advice as well.
Thanks. Yeah, so obviously I've got even a harder job than Michael because both Michael and Holly have spoke about Citizens Advice. So I'm Stuart Pearson. I'm Head of Innovation and Business Development at Citizens Advice SORT, which covers Stockport, Oldham, Rochdale and Trafford. In terms of my ambitions was around not just obviously looking at data and how we can use data better to deliver on the mission, but a culture piece as well within our organization, how we could improve data literacy and data curiosity. And something Holly said did make me laugh, because when I joined Citizens Advice SORT about 3 years ago, I was doing the kind of exploration of kind of data, because Casebook is kind of our main kind of source of kind of data. But everybody I spoke to said, oh, I've got a spreadsheet for that. And it was then, seeing how could we capture that on Casebook instead of having a separate spreadsheet to try and get as much data into one single place. But it is a challenge. And again, like kind of we'll speak about it later, but some of it is the restrictions we've got, obviously using this amazing national platform, but obviously making national platform work for 250 local offices.
Wonderful. Thank you. I can imagine for lots of us who work in a single organization and have maybe just even teams and departments with competing and complex data requirements and needs, we're all sitting a little bit of awe for the central Citizens Advice data team that's managing 250 organizations. So just to recognize and credit that. Stu, I'll come back to you if that's all right, and we'll slightly kind of meander our way back through reverse order. But can you tell us just a bit more about the main challenges that you face, and also maybe, what you feel are the, I suppose, opportunities and differences that you've found within your organization from a data perspective?
Yes, so for me, I've always felt that the third sector collects huge amount of really valuable data on the people we serve, but often we do that through the lens of satisfying funders, rather than using this data to actually inform how we should be delivering services and get better insights at kind of if we're doing what we want to do and if we could do it better. So we've got Casebook, which is obviously this huge CRM with this huge data set, and National provide hundreds of different reports to kind of drill into those different data sets. But often you find it doesn't quite answer the question that you're asking, which means then we kind of have to kind of manually download that. And we use Google Workspace, so we've been using Looker Studio as a dashboard tool. So creating kind of in-house tools, because what I want to do is make data easier to access for managers. And obviously, again, encourage that kind of more data literacy, but data curiosity, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to be making decisions. And if they've got better access and easier access to data that they can understand, they can make better decisions on the front line, impacting service delivery.
Brilliant.
But kind of, I'll let one of my colleagues come in, but I think some of the challenges is, though, obviously that kind of legacy kind of infrastructure is a bit of a challenge.
No, thank you, Stu. And I think you've picked up on a really interesting, almost sector-wide theme, which is the move from possibly a data or an M&E specialist to actually recognizing data needs to be integrated and thought about to drive decisions at every level and every part of the organization. And also your point around why do we collect data from a historic perspective, and how much is that continuing to drive some mindsets and approaches and culture in the third sector. So thank you. Michael, I'll come to you next in terms of the challenges you're facing, and I suppose maybe also any counterpoints, differences that you see from your perspective to what Stu has shared.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Well, I think the biggest thing that we share with Stu is obviously as we use the same system, we record data in a similar way, or we expect everybody to record data in a similar way because it's the same system. But when we did the data dive, we found that our three offices, again, despite using that same system, had a slightly different data output. And so a lot of the data we're recording is actually dependent on who is recording that data, which was quite an interesting difference between the three offices. One of the biggest things that we have in common is a lot of the way in which we record data is so funder driven. We can't exist without funding from those funders. And so the number one priority has often historically been recording the data that the funder needs so that they can continue to give us the money so that we can have that impact, or demonstrating that impact to funder. And Stu and Holly and I have spoken lots before, during and after the data dive, about how we better measure the client journey, that progression from when they first speak to us, all of the stages until they get a resolution. And our case management system is excellent as a diary system, kind of case notes of today we did this, or the client had this problem and this is how we helped them. But we don't necessarily record stages, or it's difficult to record those stages. So that's one of the challenges that we're trying to build on in the future is, okay, well, why are we recording this data? Can we move beyond just recording data for funders? Can we actually make this more about what the clients need as opposed to what the funders need?
Brilliant. Thank you. Some really good themes coming through, and we'll stay in the citizens advice zone if that's all right. So Holly, I'll slightly reorder things and come to you next, please.
Thank you. I think when I think about challenges, I'm thinking or my mind goes straight to a kind of local specific level, and the fact that one of the ongoing challenges I think that we have in North Somerset is motivating our advisors, who are extremely busy on the front line with the person in front of them, to input all of the data that we would like them to from a more kind of insights impact perspective. And that's particularly around demographic information. So our national network do some brilliant data insights events each month, and they can really look at how issues are impacting different demographics differently. And I would love to be able to do that at a local level, but we don't necessarily have enough demographic information collected to allow us to do those kind of deep dives. And I think that's an ongoing challenge for anybody involved with data anywhere, isn't it? That kind of data in equals data out, and what we could do isn't always possible because of what goes in. So an ongoing challenge comes to my mind.
Wonderful. Thank you, Holly. And then Finn and Fred, if I come to you just in terms of those challenges and experiences, and also maybe reflecting on where there's commonality with this is citizens advice organizations we've just heard from, and where you see difference within your organization.
A huge commonality is the funders' demands for data. So us as a smaller organization, we've got around 20 staff members, 24. And the way that we've collected data historically is definitely been shaped by funders' demands without us having as much of an impact on collecting our own data to evaluate ourselves. And the way we've captured data for our own purposes and learning was very qualitatively. So talking to service users, talking to people who've been through changes. We work with lived experience. So there's a lot of that one-to-one connection ongoing, which has built the trust and has allowed us to do really good work and help a lot of people. But in terms of each year, the evaluation of data has been very much restricted to how much, how much pounds of debt have we managed each year. In 2023, that was something like 4 million. How many clients have we reached? So very basic level data. And the challenge that we were facing prior to coming to DataKind was this data. We have a lot of demographic data similar to Citizens Advice, but we don't have a centralized system to really make use of that, and we haven't made use of that. So the education data is different from the advice data. And in coming to DataKind, that's what we wanted to change. And yeah, as Holly was saying, the performance, at what stage have we helped a client? That's something that looking ahead, we really want to capture this long-term evaluation, how much, because we believe that financial education is huge in people's well-being. There's a big connection there. But so far, we don't have the data proof, the quantitative proof. So that's where we are at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Finn. We're coming close to the time when we're going to start addressing questions in the chat. So just to encourage any attendees from all the things you've already heard, please do add those in. Question for Finn and Frederick, I suppose, just thinking about your experience at Money A+E, a smaller organization, maybe at the beginning of your journey or more at the beginning of your journey. What would your recommendations and advice be to attendees who are in a similar position or maybe wondering, oh, should we do something about data in our organization? Or if they're a funder or a commissioner that's working with smaller organizations, what advice would you give to them based on your learning and experience with DataKind UK?
I'll come first, then you kind of. So some of the key thing I'll probably say, kind of have a clear, kind of define your clear objective, what you want to do when collecting data, particularly for small organizations. So understand what you want from your data. That's really helpful, and also kind of money. Start small, regardless where you are. Start small, and kind of being able to manage in the scope that you have. And continue to seek feedback, and also elements of what we've been doing as well, revisiting our data collection. Is it still relevant for the things that we're doing? So that's very important, and also an aspect of training your staff as well. Make that something that's that you do. So yeah, so that's some of the things I'll say. Finn, you can come in and say anything.
I think that would be our advice to companies at the same stage as us. Make time available, as Fred said, make space available, and also have space to reflect on what's been going on. And certainly start small is good, because it feels great to have achieved a comprehensive evaluation as we wanted to do that. Well, I say it's small, but yeah, it's the first time we did do that with a great team. And there were certain things, maybe when we first phrased the questions, they were too broad, so we kind of narrowed them down in the process. And I think the more achievable they are, there comes this element of success that, hey, we've done this, and it gives us courage to continue. In terms of to funders, I think an exchange on what is measured and what what small organization tries to measure anyway would be really interesting to see what the commonalities are and how much we can use our own theory of change and how much the funder's theory of change may or may not align with that. I think that would be really well welcomed.
Brilliant. Thank you both. And then shifting almost to a completely different end of the spectrum with our colleagues from Citizens Advice, and recognizing that, you've all spoken to that kind of, I suppose, challenge of tackling or dealing with legacy systems and quite a large amount of accrued data in different formats. What would your advice be to colleagues on the call who are maybe dealing with that, wanting to take a step forward in that data journey that you've already, gathered quite a lot of stuff, quite a lot of data, and now you're looking to kind of put more structure, quality, or I suppose redesign around that from a data architecture and governance perspective. So anybody want to jump in at this stage rather than me just selecting names from a hat, which I can do if I need to. Wonderful. Thanks, Holly.
I'll jump in to start us off. I think, and it might sound really simple, but it's about building relationships with other people in your organization that are tackling those issues. So on a kind of smallish scale, Michael, Stu, and myself, in some respects, have got absolutely no reason to be working together, but finding other people that are working on the same issues as you, is just incredibly helpful to try and take those baby steps and hopefully bigger and bigger as we go on, steps forward.
Yeah, I definitely think working with colleagues, because I think you alluded to it, Lindsay. Sometimes in charities, especially smaller charities, data is just someone's role, and it's not seen as a kind of collective responsibility. So it can kind of feel a lonely position. So being able to engage with colleagues, obviously in the network, but obviously working with kind of DataKind has been great to kind of share some of those questions that we've got and some of the challenges. I mean, interestingly enough, going back to kind of Michael's point, one of the big insights that we got from it was how much funders were kind of polluting the data in terms of they were really driving some of the data stories. And then because of that, we were getting a distorted view of outcomes, for example, because they were being recorded much more rigorously if it was a funder was attached to it rather than if a funder wasn't. So it made us rethink what the assumptions we were already making about our data.
Yeah, really like what Stu said there. I think if you were talking to your point, Lindsay, about not necessarily legacy, but older systems that you've had for quite some time, you're collecting lots and lots and lots of data. It's trying to understand what assumptions are in that data. Are you taking it for given? Really trying to drill down, well, why is it being recorded in that way? And what does that represent? Is this actually representative of the reality we think it is, or is it representative of that skewed reality, like Stu said, of these different factors as to why data is or isn't recorded? And I think to a point of trying to change or, progress in your ability to use data, I think helping people from that culture perspective, not necessarily like Stu and Holly was saying, not just a single data person, but data as a collective, that it's everybody's responsibility to record data in the best way possible and then use that data in the best way possible. I think you mentioned earlier, Lindsay, about being an advisor and then going now and then from the operational side to the behind the scenes. I think a lot of the time when I was an advisor, I didn't understand why I was being asked to record data. I just wanted to help the person in front of me, and I totally get that. But now seeing it from the data side, I've been able to better help people to understand, well, if we don't have this data, we can't make this change or we can't have this impact. And so helping people on the front line to understand why we're asking them to record this data has really helped us to improve that data quality.
Yeah, I think there's some really good, valuable insights from that. And that's definitely been my experience as well in different organizations, that need for data not to go into a black hole or to feel or be perceived to only be benefiting, as quite a few of you have touched on, that kind of funder narrative, but actually to improve things, to improve our impact, to improve our service, our quality, our decision making, and also to understand almost what or where next. How do you ensure data quality in your organization? And then it would be interesting, Finn, to come to you afterwards from a different organizational perspective. But Stu.
I think it's definitely more carrot than stick. I think it is about what we did a lot about was the data doesn't just go into an annual report or go to a trustee or go to a funder, that staff and volunteers get to look at the data and understand it and use it as a tool to celebrate the impact we make and just remind people on a daily basis the difference they're making to people's lives. So I think by doing that, it encourages people to record their outcomes or make sure they're doing that data because they get more of an understanding of the value of that data.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stu. And Finn?
Yeah, we share that for sure. The DataKind report was very extensive, and given the various levels of data literacy, we decided to just put that into a presentation and take the highlighted outcomes out of it. And I think that is, a really great way to encourage each other that the work we're doing is positive, because that's what the data shows, and I think gives us a big picture, and everyone on board is on the same page. There was another point to the data collection. So, for example, for our advice cases, we found that, also there's various ways to put in the data. And then we didn't realize when we were capturing it that a 0 would be put into default if a question wasn't answered regarding income gained. And that would make it difficult at the end of evaluating the data. We couldn't quite figure out if this was the actual what was put in or whether it wasn't touched and it would still result in a 0. So that's prompted us to review the way that data is captured with our software.
If you're thinking about systems change and measuring data over time, how can we not just measure that, but also capture information that demonstrates that their organization had a part to play in something that can be quite ethereal and longer term. So I don't know if anybody wants to come in with their reflections on that. Finn?
Yeah, I can try. As we did go through this process this year, we at the same time developed our theory of change, and with a consultant, a monitoring and evaluation strategy. And the systems change were definitely grappling with that too. And I think having the team come together for a theory of change was very useful to get everyone on the same page and determine what are the variables that we want to measure now going forward for the next 2 or 3 years, and then sit down again and review what have we done. I think it's important for team leads to sit together and decide on, a manageable amount of variables, say 4, depending on the size of your organization, and then stick to them for some years and then review what's been happening and then change from there. But it would be, service users, how many have you reached? What activities have you done? I think, it's kind of, I get this, we want to be ambitious and we want to be forward thinking, but that's a tension with how do we present it and who do we communicate with? And in that case, it would be quite easy to capture simple data. So having that is a tension I think each organization needs to figure out for themselves.
Thanks, Finn. Anyone else want to add to that?
I think when you're trying to system change where you're not necessarily directly interacting with the people, it's a bit more difficult, isn't it, to try and measure that change. I don't know whether I'm necessarily qualified because we do get to interact with those individuals. But I would say, hopefully, in the case of this question, the organizations you're trying to interact with or trying to I've forgotten it, lobby for change, I suppose, will be interacting with those people, and you would hope that they collect data on those individuals. Something we're really trying to do, Stu, Holly, and I, and also with external partners, certainly here in Cambridge, is trying to be better at data sharing at an aggregate level. So we might not be able to data share about individuals. We can say in this area we've had this many people, or for this demographic this many people. So that could be one avenue for trying to demonstrate that impact, is trying to work with those organizations as to data share at an aggregate level.
Absolutely, Michael. And I guess just to share a couple of examples that I've experienced as well. So within Magic Breakfast, we're similarly thinking about extending or better defining that systems change theory of change, as you mentioned, Finn. And I think it is, again, just understanding what can or should you be looking at to measure, to demonstrate it. And it's not about saying we've achieved all of that, but just recognizing that we have had an influence and we've input into all of that. And the other piece, speaking to kind of what you touched on there, Michael, that we found really valuable is where either membership or sector or funder organizations have brought us together with others working in a similar space. So the Fair Education Alliance, for instance, has been doing a lot of work for their 300 or so education charity members to think about how do we want the education system to change, so that you get that opportunity to think about what might our role be, which contributes towards that positive destination, and you have a more aligned sense of direction for the overall sector. And I wonder, Citizens Advice colleagues, whether you get an opportunity to think maybe somewhat in that sense from a local to national sense, I suppose, because you've got that centralized Citizens Advice team support and enabling. But I definitely think systems change, place-based thinking is becoming more and more prevalent and important in the sector as well, which will undoubtedly put new pressures on all of our data systems and data sharing protocols. How do you use data to help with storytelling on your organization's impact? Anybody like to jump in on that one?
Our storytelling, that's a great question. And we've relied a lot for a long time and still do on these qualitative and case studies. And we think that's a huge part. And for us, it's to work on that same question too. How do we get our data to support that storytelling? But for example, we've found that since COVID, number of young people accessing our system, as well as the people with several financial exclusion factors, be that no bank account, for example, has increased quite a lot. And it's reflected in the stories that we're hearing. So it's figuring out how do we use our own data to support these case studies. And yeah, if there's any specific questions, please feel free, because that's something that we're discussing internally too. So feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. Stu.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think something, I mean, sometimes there's the danger of using the data to tell the story you want to tell, rather than letting the data tell the story. But one thing we did find really interesting during the data dive was, obviously, since Advice, we've got a lot of really good kind of quantitative data that we collect, but however, the qualitative, the case studies, is always a bit more challenging because it requires a bit more work from your advisors to kind of go away and kind of give us those case studies. But we were able to get so with our advice line, our digital channels, National Citizens Advice send automatic surveys to clients afterwards, client satisfaction surveys. Obviously, you get those responses, and there is kind of free text in those boxes. And we were able to use that kind of the free text responses, and then using kind of Gen AI to do some sentiment analysis, quite easy. And it provided a more interesting picture of kind of what the data was telling us by using that sentiment analysis across kind of free text.
Do you think funders understand the impact that they've had on the way that charities collect data, and how open do you think they are to take the lead from charities instead? And if there are any examples of good funders doing this already. So we're thinking about influencing others to be as data enthused and data minded as everyone on this call. Any advice, top tips, reflections, or case studies? Michael.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it might be a self-selecting group here. So we all, I would assume, love data, and we think that data-driven means the data comes first. But I think when working with people who aren't as interested in data, it's about looking at it from a strategic level. What do they want to achieve? What can't they achieve? And how can we use data to help them to achieve it? And that's where I felt that I've seen the most success, is by saying, well, what's bothering you? What's keeping you up at night? Or how can we use data to better understand how we can tackle that? I feel like helping people, seeing it from their perspective and then becoming data driven, rather than just putting data in front of people and saying, here's a pretty graph, look how much we can do. That, for me, doesn't always work, even though I love it and I love a pretty graph.
Yeah, just to expand on it, with leadership, I suppose, for example, with like trustees, it's about getting across that narrative that if we're not measuring anything, how can we judge progress? How can we make sure that we're improving? How we ensure we're delivering on the mission? Um, yeah, so that's obviously a key bit. Again, going back to measure what matters, but without measurements, how do you kind of track improvement?
Brilliant. And any thoughts or reflections on that tricky funder conundrum, or any funders who are leading the way in this space? Stu.
I don't know if other people have felt this on the call. Money A&E, it'd be interesting to hear from you, but I've definitely felt kind of post COVID, there's a much bigger interest from local authorities, in particular around data. So historically, we would send our reports. Hopefully, there's no local authorities on the call. We'd send our report, and they would pat us on the back and say thanks for that, and then we would move on. But now they're asking, well, could we have this? And have you found this information? Could you collect this? So there's a lot more interest in terms of the data we provide, and I think that there's a much bigger recognition on the value of the data that we provide from local authorities in particular.
Yeah, I agree with that. Our local, the Greater London Authority, for example, we've had a program with them, and they've been very supportive of us through the data collection process. And they, like Stu said, asking us a lot of open-ended questions, like how was this program delivered to you? Did you have enough support? And I think that was a really welcome approach. It adds workload, but I think it ensures that companies who are often working on the front line actually get the support that they need on a systemic level. When it comes to other funders, we've had a funder who funds our advice services, and they required us to ask certain questions about clients' well-being. And this came up earlier that some of the questions are maybe inappropriate to ask. So credits to the funder that they listened to a group of organizations, and they actually said, okay, we'll withdraw these questions because they might be good for whatever the assumption was, but they saw that the actual asking of the question did more harm than good. So that was changed, and I think that responsiveness is much appreciated.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to add my own, as it were, 2 cents worth on this one, I think what we've found is that open conversation with funders, and I think it covers topics like data monitoring and evaluation, and also things that have come up more since COVID and the pandemic on unrestricted funding and how important that is for agility and being able to deploy your resources effectively as possible. So I think there's an openness and addressing the power imbalance sometimes with funders, which is really important. And I wonder how much of that is about these central data teams enabling and equipping and supporting the fundraisers in our organizations to have those conversations and understand maybe some of the implications of what goes into a funding application and the realities of that report as well. So a really good question. Hopefully something DataKind UK can also keep championing and calling out at a sector level as well. So with that, a very big thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and move toward the end of 2024. And for those of you who haven't taken part in a DataKind data dive, I strongly recommend them as a data-led New Year's resolution. Please do complete the survey and give us your feedback so we can make sure these support and enable the sector to get even better, even more impactful, and convey that effectively with pretty charts to the wider world as well. So thank you very much, and happy Christmas for those who celebrate, and Merry New Year. There we go. Nice, a nice Monday lunchtime swap of cheers and celebrations. Take care, everyone. Thank you.